I'm back. Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Tabletop Toolbox. I am Jeff, your host, your maitre d', if you will, of this board game themed YouTube channel. And this just happens to be the 93rd or so episode of the weekly Ratchet, a show that I've been doing here on the channel for over 2 years, but haven't done actually in about the past 2 months, which really, if you think about it, isn't really that bad when you consider the fact that we bought a house and moved, and it's been a crazy, chaotic experience. But I am back. I am back as best as I can be. And I've got some news to share, some stories, some tales of woe, if you will. But first of all, hey, how about this space that I am in? This is the third story of our new house out in Montpelier, Virginia. Not Montpelier, like everyone seems to say, because it's not telephone, it's telephone. Anyways, I digress. It's been a topic of conversation, more so than I would have expected. But anyways, here we are on the third story. And I'll tell you right now that this isn't really the backdrop that I wanted. This is the space. I will be using this space for the time going forward. This is where I planned on putting things. It's a very nice open room, a very different layout, obviously, than what I had in what we called the tree house there in Ashland. I have the drum set still over here. I have a couple of guitars. I have sound panels all around. Hopefully it sounds even a little better in here. This isn't really the backdrop that I wanted. I want to do something, a little reminiscent of an auto body shop. I was going to do like a brick veneer, and maybe that will happen at some point, but it's kind of expensive. And so you guys are going to have to live with the pediatrician's office setup that I have going on right now. In front of me, a good space in front of me. I have more space in front of me than I was used to having. But I've got actually my desk set up right here. And so that way my editing is going to happen right there, which means that possibly, given time around my still crazy, chaotic, relatively new job, I might be able to just kind of pop over and, shoot a little video and then kind of go back to whatever I'm doing. We'll see. I don't quite know how all that is going to pan out. But, again, here I am. Things at the house are, well, we're getting by. We moved at the very end of February, around 20th, 21st. We spent the entire next week trying to finish getting things out of the old house. It's just amazing how the stuff backs up on you. I think I ran about 9 trips in my wife's SUV from the old house to this house just for games and game-related stuff. That was eye-opening, and there's been a significant game sale since then at RiverCon, which I'll be talking about here in a little bit. But yeah, it's just been chaotic, and in fact, I just spent the past week spending around $2,000 for new French doors in my game room. I hopefully can flash up a quick photo of those. Still very much work in progress. The doors are hung at least enough because one of our cats decided, hey, these games on the bottom shelf of all these, shelves would make a great litter box for me. A couple games got thrown out. The cat is still around, but there's been a stern talking to, if you will. He's doing okay, and now the games are safe, and also the couple of carpet rugs that I have in there are also protected from cat fur. Oh my gosh, the games are always in a detached space at the old house. Cats never went up there. And so now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, there's fur everywhere. They're sitting in my chairs. It's crazy. I have a couple gaming friends who are slightly, or at least, or I should say very, or at least slightly allergic to cats. Anyways, it's been a thing. There's just a lot going on. All the paintwork and carpets, all that stuff got done well on time. All that went according to the schedule. We've had to have some repeat visits, a couple little emergency things that had to get taken care of, but the house is looking good. There's still boxes everywhere. In fact, this is one of the nicest rooms of the house, as is the game room, ironically. Anyways, that is that. I have gotten to play some games. Obviously, it was very, very slow the first month. Then we had RiverCon, as I mentioned, that is a twice annual event here in the Richmond area, hosted by a friend of mine named Troy, who does actually this most recent event was a 3-day weekend of gaming here in town. Always a good event, and this one was especially good. I got to play a bunch of stuff, some new stuff, some old stuff. Anyways, all of that coming up. We're going to talk about a bunch of games. I'm going to change the format up here just slightly. I'll tell you about that here in a minute. But first, I have a small request to make. A fun one, I promise. I'm going to ask all of you, just hit pause for a second or put me on slow speed, and I'm going to invite you to go grab a glass and a favorite beverage. It doesn't have to be Blanton's bourbon whiskey, but I don't care if it is. No one's judging here. And I'm going to ask you to pour yourself a little, maybe a single, maybe a double. Again, I don't judge. You do you. And let us, if you will, I'm pausing for you so that you can get back. And let's raise a glass and let's toast to the return of Tabletop Toolbox and the Weekly Ratchet. Cheers. That is good stuff. I have to admit, that's good stuff, and this is one of the labeled bottles of Blanton's. I'm not a massive Blanton's fan, but it is pretty good bourbon whiskey. And their thing is that they put letters on each of these equestrian design toppers, and this one just happens to have the letter T. So that was pretty funny. Anyways, actually, I'll put this down here. All right, so I'm going to change the format up of this show just slightly. I've never really loved, especially in the last, bunch of episodes of the Ratchet, where, it was like, hey, here's the stuff I bought, or here's the stuff I got for free, review. I don't know. It just felt very commercialized to me. And with things being the way they are lately, obviously I haven't gotten to buy very many games at all. I don't really plan on buying games as much here for a bit. I need to thin out the collection a little bit. So I'm going to change up the format just slightly. Obviously still all going to be about games, but I'm not really going to do the whole, here's what I bought and then here's what I played. We're just going to talk about some games that I've played, maybe take a break, and come back and finish things up. So, up first, I'm going to talk about the first game that I played here at the new house. If you are a subscriber to the YouTube channel, you may have seen this posted in just an image on the page. This is Land vs. Sea. This is from Good Games Publishing. This was part of a Kickstarter pledge that I did some part last year. There was a delay in getting the games out. The games are basically already made. They were just kind of doing a pre-sale. You can buy this base game at like Barnes & Noble. But they did have a expansion as part of that pledge. We didn't play that. I don't have it here with me. I won't be chatting about that. This is the first time that I played this game at all. And it is a 2-player game. It does go up to 4. The 4-player is a team versus team. And the 3-player kind of has a unique set of rules. It even kind of tells you like, play the game a few times before you do this. And, maybe only play 3 if you really have to. I don't think it's really meant for it. But the idea here is that it is a land player versus a sea player. You're both representing those particular environments. And what you're simply going to be doing is drafting these hexagonal tiles and placing them on the board one at a time, very much like the game of Carcassonne. You will be trying to finish solid masses of your area. So either a continuous area of water that is completely surrounded by land, or an area of land that is completely surrounded by water. Now, when you finish one of those environments, the controller of that environment scores the points on it whether or not they are the player that finished it. So if you're the sea player, but you completely enclose a area of land, then the land player will score the points. And they get 1 point for every tile that land mass spreads over. However, all these tiles, or at least most of these tiles, are going to have these little X's, little symbols on them. And whoever encloses off that area will score a point for each of those symbols visible on that distinct area. So that is kind of a way that you can steal some points from your opponent. Maybe you're going to play a tile you're trying to get something finished of your own. Maybe you're inadvertently going to finish an area of theirs, and you can go ahead and at least score some points. Or maybe you see an area that's very juicy. Maybe it has a lot of those symbols on it, and you think, hey, I'm going to try and get those points before my opponent does, so they don't score quite as many when that environment finishes off. Because, of course, if you finish off your own environment, you're going to score the spaces of your environment plus each of those symbols. There's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, there's a couple other rules to this. Some of these tiles are going to have a symbol on them. When you play them, they may let you steal a tile from your opponent. They may let you take an extra turn. Now, these tiles are two-sided. And there's even rules that say you're only supposed to keep the side that you draft face up. The other side is kind of a secret only for you to see. However, look, I'm pretty good at spatial reasoning, but even I kind of had to flip them over and kind of turn them and kind of, okay, this thing I think can fit there. Well, my opponent is still going to see that. So I don't know. I didn't really see a lot of virtue to that whole idea of, only let one side be visible. That way, if an opponent wants to steal your tile, they only know one side of what they're getting and not the other. I get it in principle, but it didn't really work in execution. I also didn't feel like there was a ton of agency to this game overall. You've got a couple different stacks. If I remember, you're supposed to organize the tiles into 2 stacks. You always have 2 tiles in front of you, which really isn't very many. Again, you only get to see the top of the tiles that you're drafting, so you only get to know 50% of what your options are. And so, I don't know. It was a neat game. It was a fine game. It was a very, very relatively chill game. Yes, there is the idea of trying to steal points from your opponents, but it also plays very much like Carcassonne in the idea that, you're trying to finish your own things. You kind of have your mindset on what you're doing. So yes, you can try and look out for opportunities to steal points, but then you're most likely falling behind yourself and completing your own environments. And I don't really know that you're doing yourself all that much favor trying to steal points versus just trying to get your own points for finishing your own areas, if that makes sense. This game was fine. I do want to try and check out the expansion. There are also some variants kind of built into the box. There were little coral tokens or areas that you could score immediately when you played the tiles. Those are for the water tokens. There's also mountain symbols, which did not look anything like mountain terrain on the land tiles. Again, you score those as you place them. As you start to get tiles next to other tiles without finishing an area, you can score for those. There was also something of a trade route rule, which just felt very clunky and it felt very difficult to score. And so we just kind of left those out. I don't know what the expansion does. Haven't even taken the shrink off the box. But this was Land vs. Sea, the first game here at the new house. That same evening, after we finally got to play a game here at the house, I broke out a game off the shelf. This was called Flick of Faith. This is a very, very, very lightweight dexterity game, up to 4 players, where you're simply representing different gods of the pantheon, and you're trying to flick little disciples, little tokens out onto this board. There are 4 different islands visible, plus a little space in the middle of the board, which is actually a neoprene mat. And as you're flicking those tokens out, you may get them on a certain spot, which is going to let you place out temples, which are just larger discs, big chunky wooden discs that are a lot harder to get moved by those disciple tokens. You may also have special tokens that you get from various rules or things that may come out. But one of the big elements of this game, you only play 1 round basically per player. And a round is everyone playing all of their disciple discs. But at the beginning of each round, you're going to reveal 2 cards from this deck. And those cards are going to give you crazy rules, either for the rest of the game or the rest of the round, who knows. You're going to vote on which of those cards will become law for the game, with a thumbs up for the first card, a thumbs down for the second card. And so, like I said, you're going to put one of those in play. You just don't exactly know which one it's going to be. I played this with my wife and daughter. It was a crazy bit of fun, because I think the very first law that we ended up voting for was that you're going to do all your flicks with your eyes closed, which of course resulted in just chaos. It also resulted in an awful lot of shots completely carooning off the board, or just not landing on anything. And any of your tokens that end up in water by the end of the round do absolutely nothing. The next round, I think, was one where you were going to flick all your discs. There was no turn order. You just flicked all your discs as quickly as you could. First person who runs out of discs shouts stop, and no one else can flick for the rest of the round. I don't remember what the third law was. We were definitely laughing and having a good time with this. The only thing I would say is that it just goes by like a flash in a pan. It is such a fast game that you don't really feel like there's really a lot going on. I think I got one temple out. My wife got one temple out. I think she won the game. It's very, very difficult with a neoprene mat being as they are. The textures on those aren't always predictable. And so they tend to, sometimes you flick and a disc will just grab right away, and that's, it'll stop very short. Sometimes it'll just completely fly off the mat. You really just can't predict what's going to happen. You can't really control it. And so I just felt like most of our shots didn't end up on this mat. Most of our shots didn't do anything for the game, which was kind of a bummer. And while it was definitely silly fun, you could have just as much silly fun with a game like Crokinole or Pitch Car or something like that, which is why within about a week or so, I actually sold off this game. I'm glad I got to play it. It was definitely a great evening with the family. That was Flick of Faith. All right, I also got to have my good buddy Daniel out here at the house for the first time. The place was a complete disaster. It was like, come in the front door, take a right into the game room, go nowhere else. See nothing, hear nothing, know nothing. But we broke out a game that we had been talking about playing again for a while. This is Vindication. Now, this is a massive box, the Archive of the Ancients. This was the last and final Kickstarter version of this game. All the goodies, all the expansions. I love Vindication. For a little bit, it was my number one game. I was introduced to this one actually 2 residences ago, so it's been quite a while. And the theme didn't really do anything for me. The whole kind of fantasy theme, just the setting and the characters and such didn't really intrigue me. And it still really doesn't, if I'm being honest. But I love the gameplay of this. Without going into a tremendous amount of detail, it is a very light level RPG. You are collecting followers. They're going to go around and do things for you, with you, whatever. The idea is that you were kicked off of a ship. There was a mutiny. You were the captain, and you've washed up onto this weird island, and you're going to try and make a name for yourself. And of course, as are all the other players around the table. You're going to get followers. You may get pets. You're going to do various things, hunt monsters, maybe get weird artifacts or have visions of things. You're going to do all that with attributes. There are 6 attributes, 3 primary, 3 secondary, and they're each based on the color wheel. So red, yellow, blue is strength, I think, inspiration, and knowledge. I don't remember what the 3 secondary colors are. I never remember what the attributes are called. You also have a player board in front of you with potential influence and conviction. I think I always get the influence and inspiration mixed up or backwards or whatever. You start off with a couple cubes on your potential, and of course they don't do anything because you have to unlock your potential by moving them into the inspiration or even into the conviction area. Conviction is going to be used to maybe draw extra cards when you're taking things, gathering things, gaining things, whatever. You can also use them to kind of take control of these various locations on this map. The map is a large hexagonal map with hexagonal tiles on it. You're going to visit these various locations. Some of them are going to give you attributes. Some of them are going to let you spend those attributes to get things like new followers, maybe pets, some of the artifacts, some of the other things you can collect throughout the game, fight monsters, upgrade your speed to move around, etc. And then when you finally get to a certain number of points, you get all of your potential unlocked, and there may be one other requirement. Then you become vindicated. You just flip your token over and it lets you kind of activate yourself to get a few extra things. And that's basically the game. You're going to get various endgame triggers that will come out. I think you get 2 at setup. You get more with every maybe 25 points or 15 points or 30 points, whatever it is, as people score. And when one of those endgame triggers gets met, that triggers you out of the game. It's very simple. And in fact, it's so simple that the more stuff that they've added to this game, the less and less and less I find that I need it. I love the creativity of a lot of these locations that were added on. There's a jewel factory that you can go to, and you can make what literally looks like power stones from the Avengers, but they are giving you a permanent one of those 6 attributes. So instead of having to spend it, you just permanently have it. And that kind of, just helps you get stuff done. Makes you a little more efficient as you're moving around. There's like a tower that if you visit a certain number of times, you climb up it and you get various things as you go. But so much of the game is dependent upon getting the attributes, using them for different things. Just having a whole bunch of the same attribute isn't very helpful. You want to be able to be dynamic and sort of shift focus between the primary and secondary colors. You want to be very mobile, agile. You want to be able to sort of jump around and get things done very quickly. It is a bit of an efficiency puzzle, and I love it for that. But I find more and more as I play this, that it's the basic stuff that really makes the game work so well. Now, we did play with the new, I think it's called the Chronicles expansion. I hope that's what it is. I forgot. But they added that with this latest expansion as a way to try and inject a little bit more story into the game. So now whenever you go and you pick up a follower or you get a new pet, which, by the way, the pet is one of the expansions, if you get a new artifact or a new trinket, whatever, or when you fight a new monster, one of your opponents first will draw one of these Chronicle cards. They'll read it to you. They're going to read two options to you. You pick one, and then that gives you a check mark, literally on a piece of paper, of one of the 6 attributes. When you get your third check mark of a particular attribute, you then unlock a power card. You get a card in front of you, and I found out at the end of the game, actually, that all the power cards are the same. So if you get the yellow inspiration power card, they're the same no matter which one you get. Whoever gets it first, second, third, doesn't matter. And those are going to give you a special ability. You kind of have to trigger them. There's some other things to it. The thing, I liked it. I did like it, although the first several times that we did it, we completely forgot to read the Chronicle cards. In fact, I think after the first maybe 20 minutes of play, we had to go back and okay, I got these two, you got that one. So let's read all these cards at each other real quick. Let's trigger these things. Let's check off our check boxes and kind of get caught back up. But like, for example, one of them was, okay, you go to the tavern. Taverns are where you collect a new follower. And the card says, okay, you're sitting there and you're having a drink and someone comes in and they kind of start boasting about something. Do you tell them to shove off, or do you sort of feign interest? Or like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing, whatever. And you just pick one of those two. Now you would think that telling someone to blow off, oh, that might start a bar fight. Maybe that's going to cause a problem. Well, no, none of them have a negative consequence. None of them. No matter what you do. But then you're trying to think, okay, well, I have 2 knowledge check marks. I want my third knowledge check mark. Which one of those might be the knowledgeable thing to do? Well, maybe none of them in that case really are. But okay, well, I'll play along. Maybe that'll be like a nice thing. Maybe I'll get inspiration or something. Well, no, it just gives you like strength or vision or something. You're like, well, that didn't help me at all. Like that wasn't at all, like it doesn't even connect. My reaction does not connect to the attribute that it gives me as a reward. And we felt that many times throughout the game. He goes, okay, well, I'd read it to Daniel. He goes, I'm going to pick this option because I really want strength. And it sounded like kind of a macho thing to do, or something that sort of implicated strength in some form. And it gave him something completely different. I mean, not even remotely relevant. And so that was kind of weird. I wouldn't say frustrating, because you kind of felt like you were guessing anyways. But having a 50-50 shot and really just not even knowing what the potential is to get stuff, because they just don't seem to jive at all, was a little weird. I think Vindication is a great game. I think the base game is fantastic. I honestly think that's all you need. Maybe the pet expansion, which is kind of a little mini thing they added on. I don't know if you can actually buy that separately. I really have no idea. But the pet thing is pretty nice. That's really about it. Base game is fantastic, and I still highly recommend Vindication. That's by Orange Nebula Games. All right, one more here before a quick break. Obviously, the move has been crazy and stressful and everything else, so my wife and I did get a weekend back in there a few weeks ago to hit up Cask and Stave, our local speakeasy, for an evening of a couple of drinks and some snacks, and we played Planet by Blue Orange Games. Now, this is one of the oldest games in my collection. I have had this for a long time. My wife and I actually played it at a little game shop, bookshop, cafe shop down in Athens, Georgia, if I recall, and loved it. And I bought a copy of it on my way home from that trip. This is a game where you are building a planet, which is sort of this dodecahedron vessel in front of you with magnetic sides, and you'll be drafting these pentagonal magnetic tokens that then snap onto these magnetic sides. Each of these tiles has 5 triangles of different environments. They'll have at most, I think, 3 different environments, at least 2. And you're going to be trying, possibly, you may be trying, to place them in a way so that those environments kind of spill from one tile to the next. So even though this thing has sharp edges like a 12-sided die, the edges are considered to be smooth. So if you have grass on one end and it connects to a grass on the other tile, then they are together. They are one large area of grass. You're going to play a couple rounds of this, drafting a tile, snapping it to your planet, and then around round 3 or 4, you're going to start to attract animals to your planet. There are cards that sit beneath the display of tiles, and you're going to know coming up, there is a variant where you can play them face down, so you don't know what's coming up. But you're going to know what's coming up in the default game. And so you may have an animal that says it wants the largest area of grass that also touches some water. Maybe it's an otter or something like that. And so you're going to then, when that animal kind of comes up for selection, you're all going to look at your planets. You're going to say, well, hey, I've got, if I kind of run across all the different tiles, I've got 10 triangles of grass that are all sort of contiguous, and at least one of them touches some water. And someone else has 8, someone else has 4, you have the most, so then you'll take that animal. There are also some scoring cards you get at the beginning of the game that's going to kind of give you a focus. It's going to give you a particular terrain to focus on. And let me see if I can remember them all. There are deserts, grasslands, ocean, Arctic, and mountains. And so you're going to get a card that may tell you to focus on grassland, which is why you might want that particular card. But at the end of the game, you're going to count how many of those triangles, specific triangles you have of grass, and that's going to tell you how many points you get at the end of the game based on your card. But then every card, every animal that you attract that matches the color, these cards all have colored borders around them in those 5 colors. And if you attract an animal that is the same color as your gold card, you're only going to get 1 point. If you manage to win a card from, say, another player who's trying to get it, if you win a card, if you get an animal that is not a matching color, it's actually going to be worth 2 points. That's it. I've literally taught you how to play the entire game. You're going to draft 1 tile per turn, per round, 12 rounds. That's the whole game. And I absolutely love it. I love playing it. It is so simplistic. I wouldn't really call it goofy because you're kind of looking at stuff. You're going, oh, who wants to? I think I got it. Oh, you got more than me? Oh, man, you suck. Like, it's just kind of chill. It's casual. The artwork is simple, not the best looking, animals, life depiction of a planet type art you might ever see these days. But it's also, it's like a 9-year-old game, if not more than that. I don't think it's quite that old. Maybe 7 years or so. Anyways, just a great game. It doesn't get a lot of love. I don't really know why. People call it, it's kind of samey, it's kind of repetitive. Yeah, sure, fine. But it also plays in like maybe 45 minutes at best. It's super, super quick to teach, and it's just great fun. Love it. Wonderful game. Planet. All right, let me take a little break. How about we get the question of the week? All right. This may not have been my best idea, but the question of the week for the last episode was, what were your thoughts on board game content creators sort of stepping aside for a moment to talk about another topic, specifically those of politics or, let's say, current, maybe even human rights events. This was spawned by 2 different postings. One was from Alex of Board Game Co. The other one was Sam Healy, formerly of the Dice Tower, although he did not make this post from the Dice Tower. He did it from his own, I think it's Flip Side of Gaming channel. It's fair to say that this was not the best topic for Question of the Week to pick at what may have been the last episode of my show. That's not why I'm back, mind you. But, I was kind of, even as I was editing, I was like, this was not not the best idea. Anyways, I'm going to do things a little differently just for this one episode. I am not going to read off answers from everyone who contributed. 2 reasons. Some of them got fairly long, which was kind of understandable. It's an interesting topic. The other thing is that I didn't really want to turn my answers into a debate, and certainly not an argument with any of you. So to kind of keep things somewhat streamlined, I'm just going to pick, I've got 4 sort of general themes that came out of those comments, and I'm just going to kind of run through them. So up first, folks said, you should pre-warn people. If you're going to do content about this, give us something ahead of time that says, hey, this is what I'm doing today. This is what I'm talking about. You can, stick around or not. Don't just kind of segue into it. And I think that kind of makes sense. I mean, honestly, that is, at least for Alex, his entire video was titled something completely unrelated to board games. If you just stumbled upon it, you would not know he was a board game channel to begin with. As far as Sam goes, honestly, I did not watch the video in which he went. I think it was even a post on his Facebook page, to be honest with you. I don't even think it had anything to do with his channel initially, but I did not read it because I really didn't want to. So that I don't really know how that was presented. I don't think it had, I think because it was from his own Facebook page, that alone sort of made it detached from board gaming in general. So I get it. No argument really there. The next theme was, I'd rather not see political content. It should stay where it belongs. Understood. However, as I said in that last episode, and I still stand by this, I think the point of at least Alex's video was not politics. It was human rights. It was, again, sort of the state of affairs these days. And someone did comment that, everyone politicizes stuff. Well, yes, because that's easy to do. And it's easy to do, honestly, because we have fallen victim to this two-party system, right? It's the left versus the right. And I've always said this is not a new idea, and I don't think it's even my idea. But when there's a two-party system, when it's a competition between this group and that group, the only people who lose are us. We lose. Because those folks are acting for themselves. They're acting like a sports team. And let's face it, most sport teams don't really care all that much about the people who are watching, as long as they're getting the money, which is exactly what's happening. But I digress. The stuff that has made it very difficult, as I talked about in the last episode, is very difficult to get it here. And let's talk about board games, everybody. While the world is on fire around us, is because those are because those are human rights events. What was happening in Minneapolis, what's happening all over the place, especially here in the U.S., also in places like Hungary, Russia, all that, is not political. It is human rights. So, regardless, it's not board game content. So I think your comment still stands. I think that theme still stands. But then the next point that people brought up was that some folks said, look, I think more people should be talking about this. I think it should be more of a common talking point. This is something we should be discussing because it affects all of us. There are certain people who are being targeted, but if we just kind of sit by and let it happen, what's to stop us from becoming the next target? There's a famous quote that I saw in the Holocaust Museum right here in Richmond, and I can't remember word for word. I don't want to butcher it, but it basically said, when they came for these people, I didn't do anything because I wasn't one of those people. When they came for these people, I didn't do anything. I wasn't one of them, didn't bother me. Then they finally came for me, and there was no one left to stand for me. And that's kind of how I feel, honestly, these days. The last topic that folks brought up was that talking about other topics, be it just, whether it's politics or not, kind of helps your audience connect with you. And that was, I think, the one I wanted to end this on because I appreciated kind of hearing that. And some folks said, I don't want to hear politics. If it's if you start talking about politics, I'm just going to unsubscribe and go away. Well, hey, that's fine. That's certainly your choice. I'm not going to try and stop you. I'm also not necessarily going to say, oh, well, gosh, then I can only talk about board games. I will never talk about anything else. Folks, I just spent 7-8 minutes at the beginning of this episode talking about my house, and I bet a lot of you stuck through it. And a couple episodes ago, a while back, I talked about one of my cats passing away. I did 2 episodes on that guy. Didn't lose anybody. So I think it's fair. I think even I kind of recognize the idea that, yeah, as some of you said, this is my platform. This is where I choose. This is what I chose to do. I'm not getting money for it. I'm not. I'll tell you that straight up front. It's just something I enjoy to do. And if I want to take a little diversion, talk about something that I find is important, well, I'll do that. Sure, I'll maybe give you a heads up. I won't wax on about it for a half hour because I don't think that's the point. That's not what I want to do. And frankly, and I've said this in the last episode, it is not in my intention at all to suddenly start talking about those topics or topics like that here on the channel. I really was just kind of curious what your thoughts are of it. As much as I follow current events and politics, maybe more so than I should, more so than it gives me a good, healthy way of life right now, I'm not an expert. I don't remember every little detail. I don't remember every word, as I pointed out a little while ago. So I'm not a good source. I'm not a good source to tell you, unless I'm literally reading off of something. You can do that yourself. I think you should. Honestly, I think we all need to be aware of what's going on. But it is really not my intention to be the one who tells you about that stuff. I hope that we are all staying informed in this age of misinformation that comes really easily at the hands of one of these stupid things. Anyways, that is it for Question of the Week. A much more interesting topic for next week, I promise, coming up here in a little bit. But first, let me tell you about some more games. All right, so as I kind of mentioned earlier on in the episode, the RiverCon event took place here in the Mechanicsville area of Richmond a couple of weeks ago, and I did get to go for all 3 days this time, and I played a bunch of games, and it was fantastic. So up first, I'm going to talk about Trajan. This is a Stefan Feld game, as I believe this one is a good 9 years old or so. I knew of Trajan, but I didn't really know anything about it. I'm going to be honest with you, I've slept quite a couple times since I played this game, so the details are a tad bit fuzzy. This has nothing to do with that at all. Anyways, Trajan is a Euro game, Euro and a half game, actually. And it's one of those games where you really feel like there's a lot of different mini games that you're kind of just working on in different ways. And you focus on those different mini games by playing a Mancala element. You have these colored tokens in front of you with sort of a sliced wheel, 6 wedged wheel. And you're going to pick up all the tokens from one spot, drop one down in each consecutive spot, and wherever you drop the last one, that's going to trigger a Roman numeral, if I recall. And that Roman numeral corresponds to different spots on the board, and you're going to sort of play that mini game. There's one where you're trying to load materials onto ships and simply get points for how many of the same or how many different or pairs or sets or whatever that you're trying to put together to fulfill those orders, so just get points. There's one, this is set in kind of like the Roman Empire. And so there's one where you're moving your generals and your armies around. It's kind of like an area majority, sort of first to get there, gets various rewards, little mini game. There's another one where you're trying to build different types of stuff. You're collecting different things. I think they were like doors and windows, like production, something like that. And for each different one you get, you're going to get points. If you get many of the same kind, you get different rewards, something like that. There was one board where or one area where you're sort of going up a votes track. You just move up that space, and whoever's furthest up at the end of each round is going to get some points, etc., etc. I thought it was interesting because I did not know that the Mancala element was used in a board game prior to that of Ostia. Ostia was from Ukabakoya, and it is a really neat game with that same Mancala element where you pick up, you get stuff, and where you drop off the last boat, in this case, you take an action. And I really do like Ostia. Trajan just felt like 6 distinct little mini games that you're all sort of doing in weird, inconsistent ways. It reminded me of Nova Roma, which is not a Stefan Feld game. I can't remember who made that game. It's a pretty popular designer. And same thing. I just kind of felt like you're basically playing 6 board games at the same time, and each one's a little snippet. A very, very lightweight little mini game, and it's just trying to, find points where you can. And that was a lot of what Trajan felt like, was just kind of sitting there and looking at your tokens. Okay, well, I can do that, but I'm not really set up to do that. I can do this, but I'm not going to get a lot done with that. And I can do this, and I can get a lot of points, but not as many as if I could get this, but I don't have that. And it's just, you're sitting there kind of kicking yourself because the tokens just aren't in the right order, and it's very hard to kind of control where they go. Because when you pick up, you start dropping, and then all of a sudden you realize, well, I was going to do that action next, but now there's an extra peg there. So if I pick up there, I'm not going to do the action I was going to do. I'm going to do the next action, and it just kind of throws you off. And all of that to just play 6 little mini games, it just wasn't really that much fun. I didn't really enjoy this. I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it. I just feel like games have kind of moved on from what Trajan does, obviously nowadays. So anyways, that was Trajan by Stefan Feld. The next game I played, actually I played this earlier in the night. We played Return to Dark Tower. This is from Restoration Games. And I've known about Return to Dark Tower for quite a long time. It's not a old game really by any stretch. Maybe 3-4 years. 3 years is going to be my guess. But it is a cooperative game driven by an app, and the main focus of this is this large plastic tower that sits in the middle of the table on this board in front of all the players. And this thing has lights and sounds and moving compartments and all kinds of stuff. It does a ton of things. It has a area at the top. You're dropping these little skulls in, and then throughout the game it's going to spit those skulls back out at different players at different times. You never really quite know what's going to happen with this. As I already mentioned with Vindication, I'm not a huge fan of these fantasy type games. I just don't have any fascination whatsoever with skulls or bones or any of that kind of stuff, and so that was kind of one reason why I just always stayed away from this game. But I saw someone had a little sign up to play. I was like, what the heck? I'm going to finally try this game out. And I loved it. I really had a good time with this. I will say that like a lot of co-op games, this does provide some opportunity for alpha gaming. It's very easy to say, well, you need to do this so that you can do that, and you need to give him this, and then he can do that, and then we're going to win. Luckily, our table was very good about not doing that. We were very good, and even I tried to kind of make it a point of, I see this path, but what do you guys think? Are you okay with this? Are you not? I'm definitely one of those, especially when I'm sitting around people who I don't know that well. I didn't know anybody at the table. But I kind of try to make sure that, hey, let's sort of play evenly. Like, I really need something you have. Can I give you something for it? Which was funny because there were a couple of times that they fed me stuff like, hey, you're going to be able to wreck shop if we give you this. We need you to wreck shop. Have these things and go do. And I was like, well, I don't have anything to give you. Like, it's fine. We don't need anything. We need you to help us win the game. Go. And so that was kind of, I appreciated that mindset, certainly. But it was also just a little awkward for me from time to time. But the basic premise of this game is that you've got sort of a quest. You have an objective that you have to meet. When you meet that objective, it triggers a main boss that comes out. And then throughout the game, you're going to have other little minions who are going to sort of come out and wreak havoc. They're going to get sort of jumped around the board towards people. You have 4 quadrants of the map, northeast, south, and west. Each quadrant has, I believe, 3 or 4, 4 different buildings. Yes. I don't know what they're called. But like one is a town center, the other one's a market, the other one's, a chapel or something like that. On your turn, you're going to trigger a start of turn effect. Each one of you has this. It may give you a resource. It may let you kind of, do something, gather something, whatever. I was the warlord, and so I would get armies, just little tokens that represent armies. Another player kept referring to them as life because if you ran out of them, you did die. But they are technically armies that you're sort of sending in to fight on your behalf. You would do that, and then you're going to pick a main action. That main action might be attacking somebody. It might be, attacking an enemy on the board, not another player. It might be to attempt a quest, or it might be to remove some of these skulls. As these skulls come out, the player who controls that region sort of picks which building they're going to go on. If any building, I think, gets 4 skulls and it becomes overrun, there's a name for it. I don't know what it's called, but that building gets overrun, it gets wiped off the board, and usually something very bad is going to happen to the player who controls that region. You're also going to get to do a movement in there somewhere. You have a movement that can be adjusted, possibly, upgraded, whatever. And then you're going to get to take an action at one of the 4 buildings. If at any point you're at one of those 4 locations, whether it's in your area or not, you can move freely around the board. You're going to get to do different actions at one of those different buildings. And all of this, except for that start of turn effect, you can do in any order that you want. So you can do a movement, you can attack something, you can continue your movement, trigger a building, and that's your turn. Or any other order. And I really loved that efficiency. Like, okay, I get this movement. Maybe I could spend a token to get a little extra movement. Let me try and hit this, go over here, set up for this, get to this thing, and then I'm going to move over here and be ready for my next turn, or at least kind of get there, be a little closer to where I'm trying to get. I loved that style of play. And the app was really kind of interesting. When you would go to attack somebody, the app would pop up a bunch of cards. You didn't have a whole lot of decks of cards managed. There was a couple. But it would pop up these cards. You would pick which cards you want to go up against to fight this enemy. As the enemies got harder, you had to pick more cards. And the cards, I think, also increased in difficulty, if I recall. And then each card, as you reveal them one at a time through the app, again, all in the app, it would tell you, okay, this card's going to require you to spend something, lose something. Maybe it's just a bunch of those armies. Maybe you have to get rid of a certain card. If you don't have it, then you have to either try to get rid of that card. You could spend, there was a word, I don't remember what the word is, but you could downgrade the severity of those cards up to a certain number of times. You would have certain attributes that said, okay, well, if you're going up against an animal or a monster or whatever, then you could use these attributes to kind of diminish a certain number of cards, only a certain number of times for that attack. And then you had to keep track of them yourself. The game didn't know specifically what all you had. And all that to say that, again, that I really, really enjoyed this. And in fact, I went and made the first attack on the enemy boss. The enemy boss, actually, as you weaken those cards, it becomes permanent. So the game does keep track of which cards you have diminished. And so you're always going to be going up against different cards against the enemy. And maybe if you can get a card that's already been weakened, it'll be a little easier for you to take the boss guy out. But I managed to take him out in a single turn. I basically, in one attack, I went in with a ton of armies and a ton of upgrades, and I took him out in one turn. And there were high fives around the table. We all had a great time with this. And I really, really enjoyed it. I'm one of those who will have the experience to go, I need to get this game. I'd have a ton of fun with my family playing this game. But again, my wife and daughter aren't really into that kind of theme. I don't see this being something that my daughter would want to play more than once or twice. I just don't think it really is going to have a lot of staying power. And I also do understand the game might be a little better at 4 than lower player counts. Though I thought it felt fine at 3. 2, I understand it's not really that great, although people do also play this solo. Anyways, I've rambled on long enough about a very fun experience with Return to Dark Tower. Another game I played, I'm not really quite doing these in order. In fact, I'm not covering all of the games I played at RiverCon in this episode, but I played Corrosion. This is from Capstone Games. I did not make note of the designer. It is Stefan Bauer. I do not know who that is. Maybe I should, but I don't. This is a kind of interesting an engine building and an engine destroying game. You're going to have this very odd display in front of you. You're going to have a spot for 3 upgrades in your sort of bottom left area of this player board thing. You're going to have this wheel mechanism in front of you with a gear on it. And you're going to be getting these cards. Start off with a couple of cards. You're going to be getting more cards throughout the game. It's kind of a deck builder in that sense, but it's a little bit more like Obsession is a game I'm thinking of, where your hand is basically your cards are your hand. Your hand is everything that you have in your deck. That's what I was trying to say. Your hand is your deck. And so you may eventually sort of pick up all your cards, but you don't just have a hand size of 5. You just have all of your cards. Anyways, on your turn, you might play a card to do various effects, and those effects might let you draft things from the central display. You may get one-time effect engine pieces. You may get sort of ongoing engine pieces, and depending on where that wheel is on your player board, you're going to put those tokens in. I believe it's the number 3 spot. Number 1, I think it's the 3 spot, which means it's going to sit there and run for 3 times, because I think the 0 actually is the one right after. That's what it is. So you're going to place it 1 spot behind your 0. And then you're going to get to run those engine parts. So on your turn, instead of playing a card, you can choose to run your engine. You, I believe, turn your gear. You trigger everything that a certain spot is facing, I think the 0 spot, everything that the 0 spot is pointing towards, all those engine mechanisms run if they have been fully built. Because when you're drafting those things with your engineers, they go into your engine, but you still have to actually build them. You don't usually pay anything to draft them. There are a few things that you may still have to pay costs for, but typically you're going to be paying gears, and there's kind of like a small, medium, and a large. And you're going to be paying those gears to activate these machinery pieces. Like I said, the static ones, or the ongoing ones, I should say, they fire off every time you turn the engine, but the one-time effects only fire when you've got the 0 space pointing towards them. And then anything that's in that slot, any of those engine pieces, whether or not they were built, get destroyed. They go away. They just go into the discard pile. And then, like I said, there may be an action in there somewhere. I don't remember exactly how it happens. When you get to pick back up all your cards, I think there's one other thing that you get to do as part of that action, and that's basically it. I mentioned you've got a couple of permanent spaces on your player board. You've got these tokens that you're kind of these tiles that you're getting throughout the game. They're usually very expensive to get built. But when you get them into play, they will give you an ongoing benefit or some sort of end game scoring. And there's 3 different shapes for those tiles, and you only get to ever have one tile active in each of those spaces. So you may have something running, maybe you kind of get tired of it, or something better comes along. You can kind of overbuild that upgrade, and the previous one is gone. You still hold on to it, but it doesn't do anything for you anymore. That's kind of Corrosion in a nutshell. The game was okay. I didn't really love it. I found that the timing elements of this was really, 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 really difficult. There is a lot of randomness, even with the fact that there are things that you're drafting and you can sort of choose when you're going to play cards or turn the engine. I still kind of felt like there were times when you had to run the engine in order to get the stuff to then finish building parts of the engine, which then you didn't really get to run that many times anymore before it got destroyed. And so you had to focus a lot on getting those resources, but then you weren't doing other things necessarily. And it was, I don't know, it was sometimes hard to get things. You know, there were certain upgrades that I really wanted. There was maybe 2 or 3 of everything in the stack. So you're always going to have a chance, likely, of getting something, even as it is your discard stuff kind of like cycles around. So there's not a lot of options for these various upgrades, these various machine parts that you're putting in your engine. But if there's nothing out there at that moment when you've got the card that lets you play, well, then you're kind of stuck. There is also a mechanism I almost forgot about, that when you play an engineer, the engineers have numbers and suits, basically colors. And on your turn, you can play... if someone plays a card, on someone else's turn, when they play an engineer, if you play a card of a higher number, I think it has to be the same suit, you can copy that. The action that card might give you, you then don't get to take, right? Because you've used that card for something else, but it lets you copy an action that someone else has played if maybe all the cards that let you do it you've already spent, or maybe you want to do it more than once, etc. Rarely did that happen. In fact, most of the time we forgot that there was a copy action, because most of the time either the cards that we have were too low in value, or I really don't want to use that card. I need this card for something else. No, I can't copy. So I don't know. Like I said, the timing of this was just kind of funky. It's also very, very drab looking on the table. And it's, I don't know, it just didn't click. The player who won enjoyed it. I think the rest of us were kind of like, yeah, it's fine. But that is Corrosion by Capstone Games. I'm glad I got to try that. I've had that for quite a while, actually. Up next, we played a quick game of I Made You a Mixtape. I didn't bring my copy up here for this, but just a very, very simple, lightweight I Split You Choose game from Dan Hughes and Mike Licio of the Dice Tower. I've talked about this game a lot on the channel. I'm not really going to get into it, but I did get to play this with a new player. Her name is Rook. I've known of her for a while. Never got to play with her. It was really, really nice to get to play a game with her. That was I Made You a Mixtape. The next game we'll talk about, we played on Sunday morning. It was the first time that RiverCon spilled into a Sunday, and this is Planet Unknown by Adam's Apple Games. This is a polyomino simultaneous play game where you're going to have a board in front of you representing a planet. You're going to be placing these polyomino tiles onto it. You're also going to have a little board off to the side of your faction. And it has 5 different tracks corresponding to the different types of environments that appear on those polyomino tiles. So when you place a tile out, each tile is going to have 2 different biomes represented on it, and you will move up these little cubes on those tracks in relation to the biomes that were on the tile that you placed. And they may give you new technologies. You may sort of there's a technology track that's pre-printed on your board, and as you pass various spots, you unlock new abilities that kind of bend the rules for you a little bit. There's a rover track. You're going to get rovers out onto your planet. They're going to be driving around to pick up meteorites. Some of these tiles come down. They have a little meteorite printed on them. You're going to place a token on them, and then you're going to drive your rover around to pick those pieces up. They're worth points for you at the end of the game. Each planet also starts off with 6 life pods or escape pods on it, and you have to go around and pick those up, because if you ever place a tile over top of a life support piece, it gets destroyed. So on and so forth. And there are other tokens. There's a little green token as you hit various spots on the sort of, life or forest token or forest track. You're going to get to put little tokens out. They kind of help you fill in the little nooks and crannies where you maybe didn't have a piece that fit in there quite right. There is also I believe a Civ track. There are Civ cards that you're going to draft out at the beginning of the game, and you're going to get to go through a stack, pick one of them. They may give you some end-game scoring. They may give you a special one-time ability, maybe a little engine-building ability. Who knows? Whatever. They're all very random. And that's basically it. The feature of this game is a large Lazy Susan that sits in the middle of the table. You have a little wedge that kind of faces it. Every player does. And when it is the active player's turn, they're going to spin that Lazy Susan any direction, anywhere they want. And they're going to pick one of the sections of that Lazy Susan. There's always 2 tiles available in each section, and you're going to get to pick from one of those 2 sections, and everyone's going to pick one of the tiles currently facing their little player wedge. And so again, it's simultaneous play. Okay, it's my turn. I pick. I'm going to take one of these 2 tiles. Immediately, everyone else chooses one of their 2 tiles in front of them, place them on the planet, and on to the next turn you go. Sometimes you got to take a pause, because some of the tracks can create a domino effect. Okay, this token, you move it up, it lets you move another token. Maybe that triggers one of the Civ cards. Okay, I got to go through the Civ cards. Well, this tech lets me do something different. Let me do that real quick. But generally, pretty quick, snappy turns. And it's a fine game. I played this a couple of times. I finally decided to back the last time it came across Kickstarter, which was a little while ago now at this point. The only thing I will say about this game is that I mentioned that there are these planet boards, and there are the faction boards, and there's the ability to either play everyone has the same things, or you can sort of pick and choose amongst different planets, different factions, and things get very asymmetrical very quickly. And some of them are slightly off the beaten path. Some of them are way out there. And Daniel in particular had a faction, and one of his, he had this token that looked like something out of Back to the Future. And something about it replaced one of your tokens, but then as you hit each technology, you would change it out with one of your other tracks. I read the like 3 sentences of rules for that 4 or 5 times. I still have no idea what it said. It did not make any sense to me. I have no idea if he did it right. He felt like he knew what he was doing. The other players agreed, fine, okay, whatever. But he also had one of the technology spots that he hit had, again, it's like maybe 2 sentences of rules. That's it, because it's a little tiny spot on your player board. We couldn't understand it, so we went to the rule book. And in the back of the rule book, there are pages for each of the different factions. And on those pages, it shows a picture of the player board for that faction. It's a picture of the player board. So the text that's on the player board is the same text that's in the rule book. And then just to the left of it is more text that is exactly the same text as what's on the player board, which is also photographed in the rule book. So the 2 little sentences of rules that we couldn't understand were simply printed in the rule book 2 more times, word for word, no explanation, no further detail, nothing. It was completely, utterly useless. You could rip out those pages, throw them away. You would have just as much help as you do with what's on the table. I don't think Adam's Apple Games is an English company. I don't know that 100% for sure. And the back of this box, which is upside down, tells me nothing. I played one other of their games a while back. It was this little beer brewing game, and it was awful. I think they really hit a home run for them with this game. But when you compare it to a lot of other modern games, it still pales in comparison. Just not a great rule book. A lot of loose ends left untied. The artwork is very good. I mean, I love the cover of this box. The components in it are certainly nice, especially this deluxe edition. We played with the neoprene planet maps. Like, I spent a lot of money on this stuff. We did not use the new expansion, Supermoon, I think it's called, or something like that. It just adds another little board you got to work with, and we didn't really want to bother with it. Plus, like, our space was a little limited on these folding tables. But anyways, Planet Unknown, a good game. But the moment you start trying to get into the asymmetrical stuff, it just kind of falls apart with terrible rules. Anyways, that's that one. The last game I will chat about here, I have talked about several times here on the channel, on the Ratchet. We played Gilded Realms. This is from Sandtime Games. There are a couple different publishers credited, or designers, credited with this game. And this is a civilization/city building game, very, very reminiscent of the kinds that you would play on the PC. Like I said, I've talked about this a bunch. I won't go into a ton of details, but basically you're getting these cards. They have a name that does not seem to make any sense with what they are. But anyways, you're going to build these cards. They go into a little timer slot on the right side of your player board. They fall down each round, and when they fall off the bottom, they then go into your territory, and they are cards that you can use as sort of resources or building components, whatever you want to call it, to then upgrade the 5 major areas of your town, of your civilization. And you've got a military section, you've got a resources section, you've got I can't remember what they're all called. You've got one that's kind of like your sort of civic center, all that kind of stuff. And these cards just flip over. They make a very nice panoramic image on your table. And as you flip them over, the art gets a little nicer. They get a little bit more built out on the image. But also you start to get more icons visible, more resources that you're going to get between the rounds, more defenses that you might get from your military, etc., etc., etc. Most of this game is PvE. There is a round timer, a round board in the middle of the table. There's 9 to 12 rounds, depending on the type of game you want to play. And at the end of each round, you're going to reveal an event for that year. And there's basically 3 options. There is a sort of a prosperity where really good things happen. There may be an attack card of some kind, or there may be kind of like a stronghold card, which is not an attack, but it means that future attacks will be stronger. Players can choose to attack those strongholds to weaken future attacks against the players, but whenever an attack is revealed, all players get attacked mostly equally. But things that you have in front of you on your board may increase your threat level, and that threat is going to equal a stronger attack towards you when those attacks do happen. There's a lot more, actually, to this, but I'm going to just kind of gloss over it in the interest of time. I really, really enjoy this game. It is one of my favorite games that came out from last year. In fact, I think I put it at the top of my list of games from 2025. It is still far from a perfect game. The biggest complaint I have with it is that the rules on attack and defense are convoluted as all hell. And for example, if you are attacking a player versus if you're attacking an element of the game, your rules are completely different. The way that you spend your cards, the way, the things that your cards let you do react completely differently based on which of those 2 things you're doing. And again, when you're being attacked by a player versus when you're being attacked by the game, again, you handle things completely differently. If you're being attacked by a player, your units stay on your board and you roll dice. But if you're being attacked by the game, your military units actually go back out into your build query because they have to kind of refresh to come back into battle. But you don't roll dice, you just use pre-printed defense values on the card. And all of that just makes for this convoluted system. And I think I've played this 5 or 6 times now, and I still had to live in the rulebook when it came to being attacked. The funny thing was I got attacked a bunch of times. I had 2 different players. One in particular went after me a bunch. But the only thing you get when you attack a player is you might get to steal one of their unbuilt cards, or their cards, the build query, and your built cards are protected. So if you just have cards in your storage, they can be stolen from you. Or you can just trade for them at no cost. So it really isn't worth it. But you may also have a caravan out. When the caravan arrives at its destination, you're going to get a chance to get some money. And so people can attack your caravan to just kind of reduce the amount of money that you're going to get, and they get to take two of the resources that are currently in the caravan that you're basically selling. But even then, there's very, very little benefit to attacking a player. And every single time I got attacked, I somehow managed to defend. In some instances against a military with nothing but a couple of civilians. And so it was always kind of funny. Obviously, those players was kind of like testing the system. They also felt like I was running away with the game, and I think I came in third place out of the four of us. But anyways, everyone did have a pretty good time with this. The one player was really just not understanding how it all worked. It is not a game that really tells you how it needs to be played. It is very unclear, even me after all these plays, what is really the right process to take. The main source of points is upgrading your province. So if you're not getting those cards built and flipping those cards over, you're not doing that well. I try to make sure I'm doing that, but I also try to play the caravan game. And in this instance, I got a ton of caravanning done. I didn't get anything for it. I mean, like I said, I came in third place. It is a game. There's a bunch of simultaneous play in this as well. And with all the different rules and different things that can happen, it can kind of be a little easy to lose focus of what people are doing and making sure they're doing things correctly. My one buddy, Tim, who played, he didn't do anything wrong. He actually did not know until one of the last rounds of the game that you could spend resources to speed up the production of those cards, to get the cards to kind of fall down that build query quicker, which of course is helping you to upgrade your stuff quicker, which is hopefully helping you to, ramp up your engine even faster. And even then, with him not knowing that, he still came in second place, which was pretty good. I really enjoyed this. I think it's a good game. There is an expansion that is under development for it. The Kickstarter already ended for that. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what else they're going to add. I like the asymmetrical play of this, although I think some factions are a little more interesting than others. But a solid game with some loosey-goosey kind of rules. That is Gilded Realms. And folks, that is it. We got through an episode here in the new house. And this isn't the second or third time I'm recording this. I promise. Anyways, question of the week for next week. Obviously, in the whole process of packing up and moving and all that kind of good stuff, I came across parts of my collection that, frankly, I completely forgot that I had. There were games I pulled off of shelves. I didn't remember that I had this, including some good old big box games, what we call the kind of games that you can pick up at a Walmart or a Target or a toy store, whatever. Things like Monopoly, Scrabble, Candyland, whatever. Found a couple of those just kind of all over the house, not just even in my game room. So the question for next week is, what is your favorite big box game? Again, I'm looking for the Scrabbles, the Monopolies, the things that you can pretty much go and buy everywhere. They've been around for years and years and years. Their production quality has fallen to rock bottom levels, but maybe there's still something about them that you just absolutely cherish. I'd love to hear about it. That is it for episode 93. Check in for the next episode where I will talk about Black Angel, Black Forest. The new Sovereign Fallen Wormwood is here, and maybe I recreated an old game. I'll tell you about it later, folks. Cheers.